Ambassador Norm Eisen. He was the chief ethics czar under President Obama, is the co-founder and executive chair of the Democracy Defenders Fund.
Look, what would Michael Steele say? This is simple. You cannot. When I worked in government, I literally couldn't take a free ticket to a game, without calling up the lawyers in the office of vice president, who would call the White House counsel's office and say, you can't have those tickets or you got to pay for them. And so the idea that Jared Kushner, who is not even a real government employee, let's be very clear, he's a layperson out here running around with classified documents. He don't even got a security clearance. That he is out here negotiating is problematic, not just because I'm hating on the billionaires, okay? But it's problematic because in whose interest is he negotiating? Is my question. And if he's soliciting funds at the same time that he is trying to broker peace in the Middle East, I'm using air quotes, I don't understand how those two can go hand in hand. Am I confused? Am I wrong? Am I blowing it out of proportion?
No. You couldn't take a ticket to a game, but he's taken a ticket to the World Series of corruption. The guy has got billions of dollars in interest in the region from Saudi, from UAE, from Qatar. Now he wants $5 billion more while he's the envoy for the United States. That won't wash. When I was the White House ethics czar, I sat down with President Obama to write the new rules. And we had an ethics pledge and a set of rules everybody had to sign.
I signed the pledge.
You
years
did?
Later, yes.
Everybody hated me because
I did not like the pledge.
Michael.
I was like, what is this?
I remember sitting there with Obama. I wouldn't let him refinance his simple family home because he was regulating the banking industry. And now you have somebody who's purporting to represent the United States engaging on our behalf in the region while conducting this huge business. That's why we like to litigate at the Democracy Defenders Fund. That's why we just filed against Jared Kushner, complaint with the Inspector General that he has... his behavior raises questions under the anti-nepotism laws. There's a law on the books.
Okay, so this is perfect. This is perfect because the New York Times, talking about his solicitation of funds, because this is perfect, thank you. In addition to the roughly $2 billion from Saudi Arabia's fund, he amassed hundreds of millions of dollars from elsewhere in the region. That raised hackles from government watchdog groups, of which you're one, complaints that Mr. Kushner has frequently publicly dismissed by challenging critics to identify a specific conflict of interest. Sir, I now turn to you. Would you help Mr. Jared Kushner understand some specific conflicts of interest from what he's doing?
There's three major areas, legal areas, that are implicated by this conduct. The first is anti-nepotism law. For those who are following along, Simone's writing it down. 5 U.S.C. 3110. You are not allowed when you have a family member who is the president to appoint another family member to a job. Never mind where you're raking in these billions. And he wants $5 billion more.
All right.
Kushner. Number two, the Constitution says when you're an employee of the United States, Kushner is a special government employee, whether he admits it or not. You can't take anything of value from a foreign government. It's such an important conflict of interest rule, Michael, that the founders and framers put it in the Constitution. That's the Foreign Emoluments Clause. Emolument's just a word for swag.
Swag, anything.
No foreign swag.
That ticket you wanted for some cologne.
I couldn't get it.
And then there's also a set of rules around financial conflicts of interest. Because how can we have Kushner negotiating with Iran, which is he acting in the interests of the United States or of these countries who are adverse to Iran, like Saudi, who have given him billions of dollars? We have questions. Was that negotiation blown up because some of his patrons wanted to see war. So you shouldn't have to ask those questions. So those are three areas of law, and we wrote a long complaint about it.
So part of what is interesting, or where this gets additionally complicated, is that Jared Kushner was on a podcast back in December of 2024, and this is what he had to say, almost anticipating these conflicts of interest. Take a listen.
We're going to follow what we think is right, and I think we're going to do good business in that regard. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it. So we preemptively tried to avoid any conflicts so we don't have to raise capital for the next 4 years.
But now the reporting is that they are raising capital. Your sense of what changed?
What changed is he wanted $5 billion more. That's all the zeros. He is seeking $5 billion from these countries at the same time period when he's negotiating over the future.
Does it make it more
Gaza
difficult or less difficult for you to litigate all of this when so much of it is happening out in the public?
I think it makes it easier because it's so transparent. Yes, it's hard to break through, but the American people understand what's going on. They want, when you look at poll after poll, you say, what is important? What matters to you? Affordability? Yes, they want to be able to pay for their groceries and the basics of life. Health care, that's been gutted to give tax breaks to billionaires. And corruption. And so they see this, it breaks through. I think the volume of the corruption helps make the case. And it's meant that the administration is extremely unpopular. I'll tell you what, they did not elect Donald Trump to help Jared Kushner raise another
No, they didn't.
X in the X amount in the Middle East. They elected him to make their lives easier, not to make Jared Kushner's life easier.
What about the sons? You know, the Trump sons, they now have, there's a new drone maker that's partially owned by the sons. They're trying to win Pentagon contracts. Does that also qualify as corruption? The group is called Power Us, and they got a lot of cash.
Well, you have to ask, other than droning on, what Eric and Don Jr. know about drones. This is a new company. It was created by a reverse merger with a golf course enterprise. And I just don't think it makes sense to have the children of the president in a field where there is competition, including government contracts. So, again, this is something we expect from China, where they have the princelings and you have an entitlement people feel if you're the child of someone in power. Or Equatorial Guinea, some of the most notoriously corrupt countries in the world. It's not what you expect from the United States. So we have filed complaint after complaint, and this is not going to go away.
No.
People, that's like a trail of breadcrumbs. And this is not the way America is supposed to work, and the people are disgusted by it.